Oh, hello everyone. Just trying to get the toys reset up here. A certain new little tiny cat in the house has figured out how to get up on this ledge, and unfortunately she needs a little bit of a footpath to get down, and seems like she's taking after her older brothers and just knocking Tron over anytime she wants to get down there. But that's all right. We love our little Chloe anyway. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Geek Corner. Oh, what's this? That's right, I am all Batmaned out because that's what we're talking about today. There are two new pieces of media based on Batman that have come out, and I want to touch on both of those a little bit and hopefully entice you to try maybe one, maybe both, or maybe you should steer away from one. Let's talk about them. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is The Killing Joke. Now, this is one of the more famous comic books in terms of it being a bit of a darker look at the Batman mythos. It gives us a backstory into the Joker, which is very cool. And they've finally given us a Warner Brothers DC animated film based on this. And they did a cool launch for this where you can actually go to the theater and see it. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I didn't do that myself. And they had this weird two-week window where you could buy it online, but you couldn't rent it. So I waited past all of that. Now, admittedly, I did look at some reviews that were going on, and there was one piece of controversy kind of around this whole thing. Apparently, it is rated R, and Batman sleeps with Batgirl. And I still feel weird even saying that. I can tell you after seeing that for myself, and it's kind of a minor spoiler, but not really. It happens very early in the film. And basically they're just using it to raise the dramatic impact of what happens to Batgirl later in the story. I can tell you in the comic book version, none of that really occurred in terms of them sleeping together. And for the animated movie, they have added this whole section to the front of the story. And this was one of the things that they chose to add to it. Now, if you think about raising the stakes for drama, you know, of course, if you throw a love story in there, you think that that could potentially raise the stakes if something bad were to happen to Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, later. However, after seeing the movie myself, I think that they could have raised the stakes without taking it that far. We already know that Batman has this really kind of strange relationship whenever he takes someone on and helps train them to kind of work under his wing. But it's almost like a father-child relationship in some way. And I think you could still express love and raise the stakes by keeping it in that type of relationship. I don't think that just because they slept together, that would necessarily mean that he loves her more than he did before, when he might have been looking at her more as a daughter figure or the daughter of one of his friends. I would suppose they're at least friends, but at least co-workers, Commissioner Gordon. So, I don't think it was necessarily necessary. That being said, it was done so lightly and it's kind of over so quick that I don't think it took away a whole lot from the rest of the movie. But I have to say, and I know that I've done a video where I've basically been ranting about DC animated films, this wasn't a great one for me, and I was kind of bummed about that because this comic is known as just being one of the staples and one of the, you have to read this. And the film, I'm really happy that I rented it because I'm probably not going to watch it again. I do think it's worth checking out, but I would highly, highly recommend that you just rent it. Pay only a couple bucks. You get to see Mark Hamill do another amazing performance as the Joker. But outside of that, there's not a whole lot. The Joker backstory is kind of cool. What goes on between the Joker and Barbara Gordon and Commissioner Gordon and all that plays out in a pretty interesting way. Certainly worth checking out once, but I have a pretty deep Batman collection in terms of the DC animated films. I just have no reason to add this to it. I just don't feel like it's one that I'm ever going to want to go back to and watch again and again, like Flashpoint Paradox or the Dark Knight Returns series that they did. There's certain ones that just stand out as being really well done, really great stories that you want to kind of relive time and time again. This one just didn't fit into that for me personally. So If you're a super Bat fan, can I put super in front of Bat fan? I think I can. I think you want to check it out, but like I said, I would nudge you towards renting it. If you're a very, very intense Batman fan that has to have everything Batman, I'm telling you, I was right on the fence of buying it just so that it would be in the collection, but I'm pretty convinced that I'm just not going to watch it again. So, luckily, that wasn't the only piece of Batman media to come out. We also had a new game drop from Telltale Games, and this game is a bit different. When you think of video games, you think of kind of traditional button mashers where you're doing a lot. Telltale Games does things a bit differently. You might know them for their Back to the Future series. They did, before that, they did Sam and Max. I think they have a Jurassic Park one that they've done. Wolf Among Us is another series of theirs. But the Batman film, or that's actually putting it in a pretty decent way. The game plays like a film. Essentially, you feel like you're watching one of these DC animated films, but every now and then a prompt will come up and you will get to decide what Batman does or what Bruce Wayne says. And that's a real big key thing in the storyline is Bruce Wayne. Right now they've released it. They release it in chapters. They actually did this with the Back to the Future game as well, where you can buy the whole thing up front, I think for $25, or you can just buy the first chapter for $5, and they're going to have 5 chapters. So if you buy them all, you're going to spend $25 anyway. The chapters typically come out, I think, within a couple months of each other. I hope they kind of speed that up for this one because I'm already hooked in the story and I really want to get to the rest of it. But for traditional video gamers, you might struggle with the gameplay that's going on here. I almost think of it as a kind of like an animated storybook experience where the main thing you're going to do is really get to choose the conversation that's going on within the story that you're watching. Now, luckily, that seems to affect things somewhat dramatically, at least from the choices that I was given. And they do this neat recap at the end of the chapter where they show you the choice that you made and what percentage of the rest of the players, basically, how they chose. So you will get a feeling of if you're playing like other people would play necessarily. But it's kind of fun to define Bruce Wayne and Batman in your own way, you know. The Christian Bale Bruce Wayne, for example, he's a playboy. He's a bit snotty to people. If I remember right, there's one scene in particular where he's kind of snotty to everyone that's at a party that he's at. And you can definitely play Bruce Wayne in that way. Or you could swing him back to kind of the more calm, cool, collected, almost like the Michael Keaton Bruce Wayne. And it's weird because a lot of this game, at least for the first chapter, you're playing Bruce Wayne. If I remember right, I think there's only 2 scenes where you're really Batman. And unfortunately, one of them is right at the very start. Actually, I take that back. There's 3 scenes. One at the very start, one in the middle where you have to do a little detective work, and finally you get to play a little bit more of a game that's more than just picking what your character is going to say. They have this system where you look at clues and you're able to link clues together. I actually enjoyed that. I thought it worked pretty well. Although I think I would have liked if they had some more red herrings. Everything was very literal, like, oh, there's this clue here and there's this clue here. Ding, 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 link them together. Okay, there's a new meaning that Batman has. But all in all, you also get some quick time events for action sequences where, you know, Batman is fighting with people and you have to hit the stick left so that he dodges left. And then you have to press the B button real quick to throw a punch. Those play okay. Some people really don't like those quick time event type games, but they're pretty short and contained to only the Batman action sequences here, so I think it works pretty well. The thing that works extremely well in this, which is weird because The Killing Joke I felt like wasn't a great story the way that they depicted it in the animated film. This story is extremely compelling. It's like they've rewound time a little bit, so you get to meet Two-Face before he's Two-Face. You get to meet the Penguin before he's Penguin. You're dealing with Falcone, who's kind of one of the original thugs of Gotham. So it's kind of cool that it's backing up in the Batman lore a little bit, especially considering that now, in terms of the films, we have Ben Affleck playing a much later in his career Batman. But the story is really compelling. pretty engaging. And quite honestly, I want to play it again just so I can make some different dialogue choices and see if I can steer the events to be much different than the way that I played them originally. So I have a feeling that those mechanics are in there, but I want to try them out for myself to make sure. All in all, once again, if you're a Bat fan, I think for $5 to try out the first chapter is a no-brainer. If you don't like the gameplay, if the gameplay really bogs you down, then you're only $5 out. You don't have to worry about it. If the story hooks you enough, which I think for most serious Batman fans it will, because they're handling the property really, really well, I'm pretty sure you're going to shell out for the rest and continue the dialogue choices to get to the end of the story and see what happens, because it is a pretty compelling Batman story. It feels right. The environments look good. It's cell shaded, so it's not the best in terms of graphics that these modern systems can do, but it works for the Batman universe. It works pretty well. It's not voiced by Kevin Conroy, so it's got some things that work against it a little bit if you're a major fan of the animated films, but outside of all that, I still think it works pretty well, and I really enjoyed it. If you're a super Bat fan, I think you will too. So just wanted to share that with you. I have not seen Suicide Squad yet. I'm going to try to see that so I can have a review of that, or just my thoughts and feelings on it for you guys next week. I know that we're going to get to see some more Batfleck in that, so I'm kind of excited, even though I understand that he's not in it a whole lot. I think it'd just be great to see the Batmobile again and his costume again, and maybe get a little punch or two out of Ben Affleck in that Batman suit. So we'll see how that goes. I hope you are all having a great week. Thank you so much for hanging out with me here in the Geek Corner. I'll catch you on the next show on the Geek and Dorks channel. Take care, everyone.